This is a huge year for Trey Lance. It's the one offseason that the Cowboys really have to figure out who he is as a quarterback. Well, Mike McCarthy talked about the plan to do that. Let's get to it. Here we go. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday and Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central, and catching up with you guys in between with these quick-hitting videos. Trey Lance, really and truthfully, one of the most intriguing storylines of the 2024 NFL offseason. And with OTAs kicking off, it really begins to feel like this is the time of the year that we'll begin to find out a little bit more about him. Because I've said this before, the Cowboys can go on the mic on a radio station, or they can go and do it in the press conferences, and they can talk about how excited they are about Trey Lance. But truthfully, they have barely seen him, because when you're going to get the bulk of a quarterback's evaluation when he is not starting, it's going to happen in the offseason. And the Cowboys traded for Trey Lance when the preseason was almost over. He didn't see any action in August on game day. When there was garbage time during the season, he didn't see any action. It was all Cooper Rush because he was always the inactive emergency quarterback. So really, and we talked about this with Joe. We talked about this when Joe Hoyt joined the show earlier this offseason from Lone Star Live. It really is all about what he did in pregame, honestly, because you know how practices go during the regular season. The rhythm is so fast, and it's all about the starters because it's all about the game plan that you're installing to beat that opponent that week. Time is always pressing. There's always some urgency. When Trey Lance really had a chance to get some work in was when he took the field before pregame warmups with quarterbacks coach Scott Tolzien. That's when that development happened. It all happened behind the scenes. I really don't know how much could it concern Mike McCarthy when he's dealing with the urgency of getting his team ready for a game day and calling the game himself. So honestly, this is the real year when the Cowboys are going to get to evaluate Trey Lance at a deeper level, because you've got the full offseason to work with him, right? There's going to be OTAs, mandatory mini camp, training camp, and then the critical part that will be the offseason, the preseason, excuse me. But before we get to all of those details, this is what Mike McCarthy had to say about Trey Lance, and I'll read to you his quotes from today's pressers. He said, "There are thresholds and development stages for every position, and quarterback is no different. Trey is no different. He had prior experience in San Francisco, so that's an experience he'll always be able to draw from. We are involved in a different offense, and the position is played differently for every quarterback in every organization." Now, this part is crucial because Scott Tolzien also talked to reporters last week or 2 weeks ago. I cannot remember exactly when this was, but you can see the clip on the Cowboys YouTube. And Scott Tolzien talked about the dropbacks, right? Obviously, with Mike McCarthy taking over the offense, there's been a heavier emphasis on footwork for the quarterback. And you guys know this, like we use West Coast and Air Coryell and all of these terms very loosely in NFL media, let's admit it. But what it really means when you have this strong West Coast philosophy is that footwork has to be on point. Dak Prescott last year, he talked about how it made him play quarterback different. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, the big thing about the West Coast when he took over the NFL many years ago with Bill Walsh, it was the fact that the steps that the quarterback took were tied together with those of the receiver, right? Like that was the really innovation aspect of the West Coast. And obviously now you see it in every offense, really. But it's a heavier emphasis when Mike McCarthy is calling the plays. That is something that Trey Lance definitely did not do when he was at college. And he didn't do much of that either when he was with San Francisco, or at least not in the same way that he's doing it in Dallas. So talking a little bit more about the development of Trey Lance, Mike McCarthy also made a very interesting comment when he said, been very pleased. Again, I take that with a grain of salt because really how much has he been able to develop Trey Lance when the offseason is only getting started for him. But he did say his athletic ability is top-notch, not a secret. That's That's why he went number 3 overall. We all know about that rocket arm that he has. We all know about how he can be a dual threat quarterback because of his legs. We know that, but still pretty cool to see Mike McCarthy acknowledge that his athletic ability is top notch. This was a part that really caught my eye, though. We've adjusted some things in his motion, and I don't want to get into specifics, but you can see the improvement in timing. So, again, McCarthy doesn't really get into the specifics, but I still really like the fact that we got to hear that they've adjusted some things in his motion, in his throwing mechanics, because you know about the quarterback school. If we look at the Trey Lance trade, it's difficult to get on board with it just because of the fact that we wished the Cowboys would have had a 4th rounder in this year's draft. We will have some questions about the fact that he's due $5.3 million in 2024. And if you want to keep him beyond this season, you're going to have to pay him. And if you do pay Dak Prescott, how viable is it to pay the 2 quarterbacks in the first place? Because, there will be a market for Trey Lance if he hits free agency in 2025. There absolutely will be. It's not like he's going to get minimum money in 2025. I really don't think so. There are many desperate teams out there that are going to keep that from happening. Remember what was the name of this Chicago Bears QB that got paid? Was it Glennon? Man, do you remember that contract? Was it Mike Glennon who got paid? Yeah, 3-year contract, $45 million. Man, teams are desperate out there in the NFL, so you know exactly what I mean. Now, although we feel like this about the trade for Trey Lance, the part of that makes me kind of like it is the fact that I do believe Mike McCarthy is one of those QB gurus in the NFL. I do believe that McCarthy can help lead a rebuild of who Trey Lance is as a quarterback. We saw him work with Joe Montana when he was at Kansas City. We saw him work with Aaron Rodgers and really rework his mechanics. And we see it every year, even with the Cowboys, how he puts a very heavy emphasis on the whole quarterback school dynamic, which is a portion of practice where they just talk about fundamentals and work about in fundamentals of the position. We've seen Dak Prescott really improve when Mike McCarthy became the man of the offense, and we saw him put together his best season in the NFL. Now, I'm not sure it was about him reworking all of Dak's techniques, but he got better at least with the footwork element of it. So I am excited about that. The plan moving forward for Trey Lance is perhaps one of the big takeaways from today's pressers, is McCarthy said, young quarterbacks need reps, and we're trying to get him as many reps as we can throughout this offseason program. McCarthy added he will take a large part of the preseason, and that's the design. Him and I talk about preseason quite often because that's what we're building towards. This might not seem like much, but I do have many questions that arise from this. So Trey Lance is going to get the big chunk of the offseason. We knew that. Cooper Rush, I don't think he can control if he stays on the roster or not. I don't think it's up to how Cooper Rush plays in 2024, how he fares. I think the Cowboys know exactly what they've got in Rush, which is a high IQ player that is well-versed in the Cowboys offense, that's been in the system for a few years now. Because even with McCarthy running the show, there are a lot of similarities with what was run under Kellen Moore. So the Cowboys know what they've got on that front. They don't want Cooper Rush, though. You're not paying $5.3 million for Trey Lance thinking that he will be QB3. The Cowboys want this to work out with Trey Lance, which should be obvious. But I think Cooper Rush has no impact in whether or not he remains QB2. I think it's all about Trey Lance. And I think it's pretty much a yes or no question of, does Trey Lance suck or stink it up in the 2024 offseason / preseason? If the answer is no, if he just doesn't stink it up, then Trey Lance is going to be the guy, I believe, behind Dak Prescott. If he does, if it's a major disappointment, then Cooper Rush might stick around as QB2. Otherwise, I think he's demoted either to QB3 or maybe even demoted to the practice squad or just straight up cut and out of the organization. We'll see what the decision is on that front when we get there. But I like the openness as well from Mike McCarthy talking about how the preseason is going to be Trey Lance's show. I don't think any of us are surprised to hear that. He's surprised to hear that. But what I do wonder about is, what does that mean for his supporting cast when that preseason comes around? Because if you want to truly evaluate Trey Lance, and if it's August and Dak Prescott remains unsigned beyond this season, does that mean, I mean, Tyler Guyton is going to take the field regardless, right? Because you want to develop him, and the same goes for Cooper Beebe. But does that mean Tyler Smith and Zach Martin and Terrence Steele are out there playing in August? Does that mean maybe not CeeDee Lamb, but maybe Brandon Cooks is out there playing preseason football? Jake Ferguson is out there playing preseason football. What supporting cast do the Cowboys give Trey Lance when he's out there in an exhibition game, which will go a long way in evaluating where he is at right now? I'm very intrigued by that. I do think we could see a change in the Cowboys' preseason plans just because they want to get a closer look at Trey Lance, and it's going to be easier to do that instead of with an offensive line made up of Matt Waletzko, Chuma Edoga, and no knock on Brock Hoffman or TJ Bass, but it's just not going to be the same as if you run it with your starting offensive line, right? Which, by the way, needs those reps as well, at least at two critical positions like left tackle and center. So we'll see how it all plays out, but I do think the Cowboys revealed a little bit about their plan to develop Trey Lance. It's going to be the Trey Lance show from here on to August, really. And then in September, it will all be about Dak Prescott once again. Ladies and gentlemen, hit the like button for me if you enjoyed the show. Let me know what you think about the Trey Lance situation in the comments, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Live show, by the way, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Central. Bye-bye.